Fiscal year 2024 budget hearings. Ms. Melvana, could you do the invocation, please?
Erora glande hes anchele heliga handeski asno koslane. Nirna detadostan heldido hest iskeon hido hest oswatli lo hegelegi skadug. Father, we just thank you this morning, Lord, that you brought us back together safely. Thank you for all your blessings, Lord. I just ask you to be with each and every one and give us wisdom, knowledge, Lord, for the betterment of Cherokee Nation. Lord, just guide us, and in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Shelley, can you do the roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Joshua Sam.
Here.
Johnny Kidwell. Here. Sasha Black Fox Qualls. Here. Danny Callison. Here. Julia Coates. Here. Joe Deere. Here. Mike Dobbins. Kevin Easley. Here. Lisa Hall. Here. Darrell Legg. Here. Dora Petskowski. Here. Cody Poindexter. Here. Mike Shambaugh. Here. Melvina Shotpouch. E.O. Smith. Here. Kendessa Teehee.
Ani.
Victoria Vasquez. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. And I just want to thank everyone for coming today. I know we got a pretty important task ahead of us. You know, we got some great folks that work for the tribe that takes care of the fiscal responsibility we have for our people and our tribe as we grow. I know we celebrated our holiday this past weekend, and you know, I had a great time just being able to fellowship with our tribe and our people. Just kind of shows you the excitement we have for our growing nation, right? And, you know, I'm just excited to get these budget hearings started, and there's just so much goodness going on right now, and I'm excited to see what we can do as a tribal council to support those who work daily and just dedicate themselves to our people, and like I said, handle the fiscal responsibilities we have for our people. So let's go ahead and Speaker Shambaugh, can you bring us that motion, please?
Number one, budget hearings, fiscal year 2024 capital and comprehensive operating budgets, and I put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. See, let's go ahead and Treasurer Janice Taylor, do you have any words to say before we get this party started? No.
The first thing I want to do is acknowledge my staff that we have with us. The budget staff works on this. We're going to go over the timeline, but they work on this for probably 6 months.
We vote at the end. We bring the motion in discussion, then we vote.
Loretta Keener is the Director of Budgets, and she's got her staff with her. I'm going to have her go ahead and introduce her staff to you.
Good morning. It's good to see everyone this morning. I have with me Daniel Stroop, who is the manager of the Budgets Office, Christy McKee, who is the supervisor, Mackie, excuse me, Christy, Janet Baker, who is our accounting assistant, and then Vanessa Fields, who is our financial analyst. And so we do appreciate this time, and hope you have a good day today looking at all these budgets. Thank you.
So I can't emphasize enough that tower of budgets that you have here is managed by these few people back here. So what they do is really astronomical. They do it with a smile, and I'm very pleased to have them. Secondly, I have Chrissy Moore with me back here. She always does the PowerPoint, and we go over it numerous times and make sure that everything is in order, and I seriously could not put on this presentation for you to give you an overview without Chrissy, so I appreciate her for that. And then Jamie Cole, I always refer to him as the lifeblood of the Financial Resources Building. He's been here for over 20 years, knows the ins and outs of it, knows the history that goes behind all of it, and I appreciate Jamie so much. He's the controller here at Cherokee Nation and literally keeps all the plates in the air. So I appreciate my staff. If you guys could give them a round of applause, I would appreciate that. Then my assistant, Jennifer Daniels, was here earlier, getting us all set up and everything. So she's not here that you can thank personally, but she also keeps things running. She has a nameplate on her desk, much like you all have, identifying you as counselors, but hers says chaos coordinator, because that's kind of what she does in our office. So anyway, let's kick this off. Thank you for having me. Thank you for introducing this. Speaker Shambaugh, the rest of the council. I think you're going to be pleased with the budget that we have for you today. So let's just get started with it.
All right, thank you, Janice. First slot we got is Office of the Chief. Who do we have representing the office?
I'm going to do an overview
do an
of
overview?
all of it, but my clickers are not working. Technical difficulties, excuse us.
So what we got? Let's go next. Got it right here.
Okay, I'm going to have to do this without the aid of the clicker. So this is the presentation of the FY24 budget of our government. I've prepared a presentation that will just give you an overview. So I'm going to walk through at the high level. We'll go over the updates relating to the budget and the budget preparation process, our revenue assumptions, discretionary funds, capital projects, and then we will finish with employment information. So FY24's budget consists of 25 departments. The departments include tribal government, service departments, resource departments, and boards and commissions. The numbers assigned to each department are going to correspond with the tabs in your white budget books. As you will notice, the numbered departments are not consecutive. We no longer have Department 16, 21, 22, or 26. Got it working now. Before we go any further, I alluded to this timeline earlier, but I want to go through the process. Some of you are new. Some of you may have forgotten from when we talked about this time last year. The budget process starts in April. On April 20th of 2023, the Budgets Department sent an email to the various departments requesting that they prepare their FY24 budgets. They were given direction to prepare a flat budget consistent with last year. The indirect cost rate was the same as last year at 11.7, and the fringe rate applied was 29.11. They were given 5 weeks to prepare their proposed budgets. They were due back to the Budgets Department on May 26. Departments are required to give detailed descriptions for each program, including their intended outcomes, the measures of their effectiveness, and success rates for each program. We also asked them to tell us who is eligible for their program, what their service area is, and how many participants they served. They were asked to detail cost-saving measures or any significant changes in staffing pattern. And they were requested to provide information on any external funding sources or grants that they reached out to, received, or any information on external entities that they might work with. The detailed narratives for each program are found in your budget books. They are the pages that precede the actual budget. They have kind of a blue line at the top. I encourage you to review all of those for each department. The review of the budget continued through June and into July, and we began ensuring that the programs were funded based on the priority of their service objectives. They were evaluated to see if they could utilize grant dollars instead of using Gen Fund dollars, and also the program's willingness to seek out and apply for grant dollars. We also looked at any federal correspondence that they had regarding their funding or any changes to their federally funded programs. We asked them if they had previously received one-time funding, sometimes we do that, and what was their current and past usage of the funding. Then we asked them, were there any auditor findings, and how could we apply best practice accounting to their programs. Finally, with what was the rationale behind their budget requests? So after the financial review was completed, we sit down with administration and review any changes in the budget and make sure that the budget that has been proposed meets with the direction that the administration wants to go and the priorities that we have for the tribe. Once administration completed their review, we did final adjustments and compilations. And then on July the 28th, we presented the budget to the Tribal Council. We are required by the Cherokee Nation Constitution to have it to council by July 31st. So that concludes the budget preparation process. This is the largest comprehensive budget ever presented at almost $3.8 billion. The budget consists of an operating budget of $3,034.5 million, which translates into $3 billion. And the capital budget is $753.6 million for a combined comprehensive budget of $3.78 billion. Change this year that I wanted to highlight was we were finally, through our efforts with our federal partners, we were able to secure over $24 million in funding to respond to the Mcgirt decision. It was broken out into 3 sections, $10 million for courts, $9.8 million for the Marshal Service, and $5 million for detention contracts. That allows us to take tribal dollars that we were using to finance this and do further investments or invest them otherwise. So that was a big win for us. The almost over $20 million of this is going to be recurring funding, so we will get that year over year to respond to that. Okay, let's go over some compliance matters. We have legislation that requires us to respond to the matters of compliance, and all of these are due to either legislative acts or requirements of granting agencies. So the cash reserve is $43.2 million. The legislative act, if you want to look that up, is LA 05-02. There are subsequent amendments to that, but this is compliance with that. The emergency reserve fund is at $4.5 million in compliance with Legislative Act 35-17 and subsequent amendments. The scholarships this year are at $18.9 million in compliance with Legislative Act 03-12 and all subsequent amendments. That is up considerably, $3.7 million increase over last year. And that is due to the number of scholarships that we're providing, but also the increase from going from 2,000 to 2,500 per semester. And then the grants cash match is now at $3.5 million. This is a $783,000 increase. We are seeing increasingly grants are requiring some level of cash match, and so we never want to let a grant slip through our fingers because we didn't have money set aside to match it. It's usually not a whole lot. They just want us to have some skin in the game, and we're happy to do that, provided you all will vote that in for us. Okay, revenue assumptions. This is always an interesting table. On the left side, the pie chart shows the 4 sources of revenue. We have 4 places we get money from. We have tribal dollars, Cherokee Nation taxes, other things which can be private donations or state funding, and federal funds. Federal funds provide the majority of our funding. This year it is 70.8%. Then if you look on the right side, the graph shows by agency. And not surprising, the majority of our federal funding comes from IHS. 24.8% of our federal dollars are from that. Second, with 21.7%, is the Department of Treasury. Department of Treasury was a funding agency that did the CARES Act and the ARPA funding, and so that is why that is so large. Okay, let's move on to the table of grants and compact revenue. The grants and compact revenue, the yellow line shows an increase of $54.3 million. This is mainly due to a $176.7 million spend down of ARPA and $5.1 million in one-time private and IHS funding grants. The tribal funding, the red line, increased by $183.5 million, mainly due to $88.3 million capital budget increase relating to the many infrastructure projects that we have going on, and then also the reserve funds that we talked about earlier. You'll notice in 2020 there was a significant jump in grant funding, and that is when your CARES Act and your American Rescue Plan funding started coming in over the last 5 years. Okay, and this is going to give you a trend analysis of the dividends from the component units. This year, the dividend increased by $33.5 million. That is mainly due to the $30 million capital funding from the Verna Thompson Early Childhood Education Act. And then there was also $3.5 million that supports initiatives in the Housing, Jobs, and Sustainable Communities Act. This is the largest budgeted dividend that has ever been brought before you all, so that's pretty exciting. And you will notice that significant jump in 2021 in the dividend. That year, the Federal Contracts Division closed a whole lot of multi-year contracts, and so that accounts for that significant jump. Okay, let's look at our tax revenue now. So we have 3 lines on this chart. The red line is the motor fuels tax. It is projected to increase $500,000 due to increased fuel sales. The yellow line is the motor vehicle tax. It is budgeted to decrease just a little bit due to lower tag sales. And the green line is the tobacco tax, and that is budgeted to increase $435,000 as a result of increased retail sales at the casino. So this chart gives you an overview of the entire budget over the last 10 years. And I want to point out, you will notice that this starts with 2015, and because we're going to projections for FY24, that's where we're getting the 10-year analysis. I realize it hasn't been 10 years since 2015. The blue line reflects the budgeted sources, also known as revenue, and it includes all the funding sources that we've talked about previously. The red line are the budgeted uses. And so here at Cherokee Nation, we have a balanced budget. Every source of revenue has a use, and so those are going to track right along. The yellow line is the change in net position at the end of the year. FY23 and 24 are unknown at this time. That's why you see them drop off. We can't know our net position until we close out the books for the year. Okay, this is the chart that you all should be very proud of. This shows an overview of how Cherokee Nation uses their discretionary funds. It breaks down, this is only tribally funded, and it excludes the general government expenses. But we prioritize health, that's 29.3% of this budget. Second is education at 22.2%, and then public safety at 10.7%. So we are putting the dollars that we have complete say over, you all are putting into those services that mean the most to our citizens. And then we do have small projects throughout this budget as well. Okay, I wanted to point out, because this budget contains a lot of proposed spending from legislative acts that this body has passed over, it goes over about 3 years, but a lot of the money is coming in this year. The top one is the most recently passed, the Cherokee Nation Historic Places Preservation Fund. This body put a revenue source behind preserving those places. It's not just enough to own them and have them, you've got to keep them up. And so that is the $1.35 million is going to that. And then, as I talked about earlier, Legislative Act 1022, the reauthorization of the Housing, Jobs, and Sustainable Communities Act, $9.7 million going into provisions of that act. The Public Health and Wellness Fund, we brought in $49.6 million there. It expands the purpose of the original act passed in 2021, and it addresses the use of certain opioid industry and e-cigarette settlement funds. And then the Verna Thompson Act, we're bringing in $30 million of that. That was passed in 2021. So now, in keeping with our holiday theme of building our nation, I want to go over the significant investment we're making this year in the capital budget improvement projects that we're doing. Now, each of these bullet points are going to have more than one project in them, with the exception of the hospital. But land and property acquisitions, we're putting $4.1 million there. Facilities improvements, that is improvements, updates to our own buildings so we can better serve the citizens. Putting $29 million into wellness centers, $54 million into child development centers, $122.9 million into roads and bridges, health centers and updated equipment at $158.7 million, and then the new W.W. Hastings Hospital at $378 million. It's a lot, folks. Okay, we're going to look at employment figures for the last 10 years. Again, remember, 2015 is our starting point. As I mentioned earlier, it's the largest budget ever proposed, and these are full-time equivalent employees. This budget includes 6,232 full-time employees. This is a 59.6% growth in the last 10 years. As an aside, almost 80% of those are grant or compact funded, so just pointing that out. Now, let's show you a breakdown of employment figures by funding source. IHS funds the most positions, you would expect that, at 3,210, and Department of Human Services is second with 599.4. This table gives a breakout of employment positions by department. We updated employment figures on the slides. This is not going to track probably with your budget books, because the budget books had employment figures as of July the 14th. We wanted to give you the most up-to-date information on this. So the first column breaks out existing full-time employees by department. Again, health has the most at 2,526 and a half filled full-time positions. Human Services is second with 413.9. The second column breaks out all the vacant positions by department. There are a total of 1,169 full-time employee vacancies. There again, 562 of those. Health has the most with that number, and Human Services is second with 115 vacant full-time employees. The third column are the new positions requested, 305 there. And again, not surprisingly, Health has the most at 169 and a half. 148 of those are direct patient care. So really hope we can fill those. The final column are the total positions budgeted in this budget at 6,232. So that is the extent of my presentation. I want to thank you all for your time and thank my staff, both here and back in the office, for that. I will entertain any questions that you may have as far as an overview, and then you can start in on your various departments.
Well, thank you, Treasurer.
You're welcome.
Like I said, you and your staff do great work.
They're
And
amazing.
knowing just from firsthand experience working there, I know everyone there is very dedicated, very hardworking. So do we have any questions for Treasurer? Joe?
Hey, before we get started, Janice, on the FTEs, are your contract employees listed as FTEs, or are they going to be listed separately?
You would have to ask each department on that, how they classify them. They send us the employment figures, and then we just compile them.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Danny?
Yes, ma'am. Excuse me.
When you talk about, on your last page, when you talk about vacant and new, for example, health has 562. Is that an additional 169 and a half people that they're asking other than the 562?
That's correct.
So, of course, you probably, never mind. But anyway, thank you.
Victoria?
Yes, thank you. Janice, on the tax revenue page, you had mentioned that we had a decrease in tag sales. Do we have any idea why?
Sharon might be able to give you better information on that.
Okay.
And I would hesitate to speak to that. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Any more questions for Treasurer? All right, thank you,
Okay.
Treasurer.
We'll be here all day.
All right. All right, let's bring, on the first on the agenda, we have Office of the Chief, starting with, looks like the Principal Chief budget. We got Terry Lee, it looks like.
Good morning. Chief will join us here shortly. I wondered if it was okay if we start with either my presentation or Chief of Staff or
Nope.
Secretary Boland.
Whichever one you
Okay,
want to go with.
I'll go ahead and
Okay.
kick us off, and then I'll turn it over to the chief. My portion is very, very small, but it's your favorite portion. I help with the charitable contributions budget, which houses your special projects budget. And so special projects is for the 15 in-district counselors. You may need some more, I'll pass them your way. And that budget has quite a few things in it. The first thing that it has is all of our external charitable contributions that we provide as a nation come out of that budget. And then the next pieces that you see are what we would consider your special projects. A lot of times, the special projects budget gets confused with your community assistance budget, which Gail houses here in her office. The rules are similar, but my budget, or the charitable contributions budget that houses special projects, breaks down for 15 in-district counselors, and that total is there on your sheet. This year, you'll have $44,500 to spend. And the way that you can spend those dollars is dictated by the budget narrative, which I've written out there for you right under the heading. And so those dollars can be used in your communities for those types of reasons. If you ever have a question, you have someone come to you and say, we need some dollars for, I'll give an example of a sports team, because you have sports team dollars in council funds as well. That's something that we would kick back to council funds first. And then if you run out, and I can speak with Jody about it case by case and see if there's some way that we can help with special projects. But we have to be mindful that we do have other dollars that are allocated for those purposes here in your office through Jody and through Gail. So a lot of times, one of the very first questions I will get is, I'd like to support someone that I know who's a Cherokee citizen who has a food truck or who has some sort of business. We cannot provide for-profit businesses through this fund. We have to be able to draw back to a nonprofit use in your community, a school or something of that nature, a nonprofit organization, a church, something like that. And so we will look at those case by case for you and make sure that there are no any kind of ties that wouldn't be allowable under this program narrative. So you have the narrative there for you. Please take a look at it. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll just run through the quick how we need to request those funds, which are listed there for you as well. Just as a manner of keeping track of my life, it is best if you request those in writing. You can send me a text message, you can send me an email. There are a few of you who like to do written notes as you're here in council. That's perfectly fine. As long as you write it down, I can keep track. A lot of you will have vendor, Counselor Coates?
Hi, Tara Lee. I wondered, is there someone in your office who can email that to me?
Yes, ma'am.
What you handed out to people?
Yes,
Thank you very
yes.
much.
Anyone that you pay for the very first time, if someone comes to you and asks for funds, I may fire back to you that they are not an active vendor. So that would mean they need a W-9 form, which I can provide you a copy of, and Gail and Jody have those here in this office. But anyone whom we've never paid before will need a new W-9. Also, keep in mind that those vendors do go inactive after a certain amount of time. So you may say, well, my predecessor paid them. I know that they contribute to them annually. Those do expire, so we need to keep those up to date. We also need to be aware if your vendor has ever changed an address. So make sure that the information, if you're paying someone, make sure that all of their information that they've been paid for in the past is still accurate, because we won't mail those directly to vendors. We will call you as soon as we have a check, but sometimes one slips through the cracks and does get mailed. So we want to be aware of all of their vendor information and make sure that they are up to date in our system. If you are requesting to split a contribution with one of your fellow council members, which happens regularly, please understand that I have to have their confirmation of the split in writing or verbally to me. It's not that we don't trust anyone, it's just a matter of keeping documentation for why we're splitting. So we want to do that in the best way possible. The next thing is always a question: when do the funds expire? These funds don't roll over. And so we will give you a deadline, probably the last week in September, just because we don't want to bombard finance with a lot of last-minute requests. We have to have them all expended by October 1st. So we want to get our dollars in. It's usually, I say, the Tuesday of the last week of September is when I like to have them, so that I'm not running behind to get those into finance. Balances can be requested from my office at any point. Myself or Rebecca Isbell can give those to you in writing, in a text message, in an email, however you prefer. And we also provide balances via email quarterly at least. We're trying really hard to do monthly, but time does get away from us. So please feel free, anytime you'd like an update, reach out to us and we'd be happy to give you the list. It is important to understand that if you have a vendor that you've never paid before, that does slow down the check request process just a little bit, because they have to be verified through the IRS process, and that takes about 3 business days. So please be mindful, if you're paying someone for the first time, it does take a little bit of extra time to get those things checked out. If you need a check by a certain time, please be sure and disclose that to me when you request the check. Those things matter for finance as well as myself, and we may have to request that they be added to a certain run, and that's a request that I have to make to the controller and the treasurer. So please be cognizant of that. And something else, if you don't get confirmation when you request a special projects contribution from me, please reach back out to me and make sure that I saw it. I may have not seen the email, I may have gotten it but just glazed over it. So please, I will always respond to you with a received. If I see it and I acknowledge it, you'll get a received message from me. So if you don't, please feel free to reach back out to me and make sure that I did get that. The final thing I'll say is that we are not able to issue special projects contributions same day. So we do require a process for that. And our friends in finance are very, very gracious to work with us and get those added as quickly as they can. They will never, ever, ever be cut the same day. So thank you so much, and I'll take any questions, but I'm sure you'll have more as time goes on, so feel free to reach out to me. Everyone has my contact info, and I'll take any questions if you have them now.
No, we have any questions for Tara Lee?
All right.
All right, looks like we're good.
I'll turn it over to Chief of Staff. if
All right,
that's
sounds
okay.
good. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Council. council members. I want to say it's a pleasure to be here with you today. Before we get started, I want to thank you for the work that you put in each and every day. I can't imagine the amount of phone calls and emails and messages you guys. So thank you for that hard work. Also want to say thank you to our treasurer, Janice Taylor, and her finance staff. They put in a massive amount of work into this proposed budget. Also want to thank the employees for their part. We have a lot of budget analysts, program managers, department leaders that work on this really all throughout the year. This is a process all throughout the year, but especially in the last few months. Thank you to those. Thank you to our thousands of employees with this $3.8 billion proposed budget. As you can imagine, the pressure is on them. The workload continues to grow, and I want to say thank you to our employees. We really have the best employees. Really, I think that we have the best government in the whole country, as Chief has mentioned before. Great leadership, great legislative branch, and I like the way that we are able to work together. But at this time, I'd be glad to address any questions you may have on my particular budget for the Chief of Staff's role.
All right, we have any questions for Chief of Staff? Johnny?
Yeah, Corey, thanks for being here today. I just wanted one quick clarification on your budget, and I think the number is 2041011. It says in the remarks that it's a new position to be determined, which would be for deputy chief, but in the paperwork it shows that it's a vacant position. So is it new or is it vacant?
I believe that one is it was an existing position that was retitled. I believe, I could be wrong, but I think the exact title is Senior Projects Officer. I can confirm that and get back to you later today, but that was a position that is filled. Actually, with the positions that show vacant on my budget, as Treasurer mentioned, this is turned in quite early, and I have filled, I think, at least 3 of those positions, so there should be 2 vacancies left on there. And as you can imagine, it's been a busy year, and I'm trying to fill those positions as quickly as possible, but recently been able to fill some of those positions.
Okay, great. So the new position TBD is the deputy chief of staff, and it is a vacant position. You're switching that?
I think I switched that to Senior Projects Officer is what that
Because there is a senior projects officer. There's special projects, 2 special projects. So then if that's going to be senior projects officer, then where does the deputy chief of staff position go? Because it wouldn't be listed on this document.
Sure, I think that will need to be removed from that. Again, this was turned in very early, so I don't think that position exists on that chart right at this time.
Okay, copy that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Any more questions for Corey? No, looks like we're good.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day. God bless.
Thank you. All right, let's move over to Deputy Chief Office.
I saw Deputy Chief earlier. He's here someplace, and he'll probably come in soon, but I'd be glad to answer or take any questions, field any questions for Deputy Chief's office.
We have any questions for Deputy Chief's budget? No, don't look like.
Thank you.
We're doing good. All right, thank you. All right, we'll move over to Secretary of State.
I saw Secretary of State in just a moment ago, but as you know. Oh, there she is. Come on.
Good morning. Good morning to everyone.
How are you doing?
I'm well. How
All
are
right,
you this
good.
morning?
All right, do we have any questions on Secretary of State? Joe?
Hey, I was just looking for the 2 positions, because we now have 2 deputy secretary of states. Are they listed under you, or are they listed somewhere else?
They should be under me. Is that correct, Tara Lee?
That's a good question. I might not exist.
Well, I didn't know if they just changed the title and left you what you were last year.
I assume, Counselor, that like Chief of Staff said, those budgets were turned in pretty
Early.
early, and I'm only effective as of the 14th of August, so we'll get you an update.
So you don't exist yet?
Probably not.
Okay.
I should go home.
Yeah. No, you better not.
We'll still call you. She sure does a lot for somebody that doesn't exist, doesn't she?
Right. Okay, so we'll get updates on where these actually, the new titles, locations, who moved
Yes.
where, because we had a lot of movement. I know that. And I know that y'all have been working on this months, so I was just curious on that, just so we could get clarification on where these positions are, they're under you, where they're getting paid from.
Yes, we'll definitely update and clarify and make sure we report back on
And
that.
congratulations on
Thank you.
becoming the Secretary of State.
Thank you, Counselor
So-
Deere.
Yeah, thank you, Josh.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you. Yep, that was a great question. I'm sure just timing, I mean, budget mods, we can really dig into that later. So, we have any more questions for Secretary of State? All right, looks like we're good to go. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, do we have any here with government relations? Oh, hey, Ms. Kim?
I am happy to take any questions.
All right, we have any questions for Kim? Oh, doesn't look like it. Looks like we're
All
doing
right.
good right now.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for all that you do.
All right, thank you. All right, let's see here. Okay, do we have, did Chief ever show up?
I was just told both chief and deputy are in a meeting. They'll be
Okay.
down as soon as they can.
Okay, do we have any questions for any of the budgets in the office of the chief? All right, Candace?
Just a little further clarification. So we are going to get updated budget sheets that show those new additional positions?
Yes, ma'am. We would be very happy to provide those for you and outline the latest for any title changes or any field vacancies that weren't included in this original proposal.
Okay, so we'll, because I think this specific question was about the deputies. Will
Yes.
those be on the budget of the Secretary of
They
State?
will, ma'am. They will definitely be under the Secretary of State's budget.
Okay, all right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you
you.
for the time, Chair.
All right, thank you. And just to drill down a little more, those would be on a budget mod, or would those be in a final budget presentation?
Well, I think,
I hope they're not a budget mod. I hope they're on the final.
Okay.
I can get an update for you.
All right, just wanted to clarify that.
sure.
Hey, Josh, real quick.
Yes, Joe?
Also, Terry Lee, when they do this, and Janice, can you update the titles, because we still have Tina Glory, and we don't have the new people in their positions.
Absolutely.
That way we can at least verify the structure. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Josh.
Yes,
Yeah.
and thank you, Chair, for your patience.
All right, thank you. Okay. All right, just one more time before we let the Office of the Chief go. Do we have any questions on any of the budgets? All right, looks like we're good to go. All right, thank y'all.
Well done.
All right, let's move on over to Veteran Affairs. I saw S. Joe back there.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'll help you all catch up on time. Our budget is relatively flat. The only increases at the Veteran Center are wage increases in fringe and indirect cost. Everything else is essentially same as FY '23. I believe we're going to come in under budget this year because we subscribe to the thing, if you don't have to spend all your money, save it. Somebody else may need it. So anyhow, you all have our information in the books if you know where to find them. They're a little imposing. When I first sat there as a new council member, I thought, how in the world? I'm supposed to vote to approve this, and I don't even know what's going on. So, but good luck with that, and is there any questions?
Do we have any questions for Secretary Crittenden?
I brought Director Foreman with me, or she came with me in case there's any questions on the Fox Suicide Prevention Grant, because she handles that and does a great job, and we're starting our second year with that. Is there any questions for Ms. Foreman?
Do we have any questions? Candace?
I would love to hear a little bit more about that particular grant. I understand this is going to be the second year as it comes up, but we all know that our veterans face a host of challenges when they are returning to their communities and their homes. And often, unfortunately, suicide is a significant issue in our veteran populations. So if you could share a little bit with us about that, I would really appreciate it.
Okay. As you can see, we received the $750,000, and we receive that each year. And we have 5 people, 5 staff in that. We have a program manager. We have 2 outreach workers. We have 2 family case managers. And basically what we have done and what we're still doing is our outreach workers hit the ground running. They're going all over the 14 counties, and you may hear about them from some of the people that you work with, or some of your, tribal people there at all the 14 counties. But what we basically do is we go out, we disperse the information about the grant. And if they see the pamphlet, they see anything that interests them, if they need some type of assistance, because we don't only just list anything about mental health. We put mental health on our little screening, we put housing, we put food, clothing needs. We just do we've got a 1-page screener. And you'll see that sometimes at the community meetings, we have those when we're allowed to pass those out. But we try to find out any of those triggers and eliminate as many of the triggers as we can with the program that would take our veterans away from thinking about suicide. And so, that's kind of the bottom line about the program. If we screen them and they have to have a certain number on the screening scales, and if they are at that point, okay, let's say they were suicidal. If they're suicidal at that point and they're thinking about that right now, then we don't take care of them there at the Veterans Center. We have to automatically get them the assistance that they need at that point. So sometimes it's a critical measure that we have to do. Sometimes they come in and they'll make a score where we can assist them with different things. There's a lot of different things. Sometimes they need food. We try to keep something at the Veterans Center to assist them with that food. But with this program now, in the second year, we can do a lot more different things. Like, we can help them. If they're without food, we can help them. Of course, we use all of our resources at Cherokee Nation, like our USDA foods, our donated foods. We refer them there. We refer them to SNAP. But they have, when we see them, if that is one of their things that they have on their list that is causing them to feel suicidal, then we try to take care of those things. Some have financial problems that are burdening them, and so we just take them wherever they are, whatever they list on there. If it's housing, we try to help them with housing. We especially help them with their mental health, though. That's the number one thing, is that we refer them. We don't, do any counseling. We don't have a counselor hired on this grant, okay? And a counselor was not allowed on the grant. So we refer to our behavioral health, we refer to the VA, we refer to private. It's just depending on who can take them and in for what's going on with them at that time. But there's a lot of little things that we can do to take the burdens off. And basically that's what the program's about, is to get them the mental health care that they need and take away some of that burden. And so did I answer the questions that you had?
Yeah, you absolutely did, and I think that the services that are being offered through Veterans Affairs are critical, they're needed, and I'm also very pleased to see the Mige Glory housing. I know that some residents recently moved in, and we are projected to have more moving in the near future. So I commend you and the staff there at the Veterans Center for the work that's being done.
Thank you.
And I'm really glad to hear about the grant and hear a little more about the grant. And hopefully individuals who are listening out in the public can now hear and learn more about it, and also be made aware that they can register with the Veterans Center for assistance for vets, and then it also looks like for widows of vets as well.
Yes, and, you know, the Veterans Center, we're very fortunate that, that you fund us to be able to, if they can't qualify on some of the things for the grant, then the Veterans Center can come in as a second and help on some of that stuff. So, we've been very fortunate with that, and I appreciate, you know, what you all do, you and the administration, for our Veterans Center. We have some of our people, I just want to tell you real quickly, we have some of our people that are in the program. Ever since we have taken them in on the program, they have came to every activity where they had no connection
Wow.
with anyone or even their family, excuse me, their family sometimes. So that's how we do it at the Veterans Center. We bring them in, see what they need, and try to take care of them.
That's wonderful.
Whether the program, that program, or just the Veterans Center. So,
That's wonderful. Thank you, and thank you for the time, Chair.
thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, do we have any more questions for, all right, Johnny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this might be a question more for Secretary Crittenden, but in general, I know there had been some talk in recent months about expansion to the Veterans Center and you know, hiring and making it a bigger place. It just generally, Mr. Secretary, how do you feel that your overall capacity at the Veterans Center is compared to the increasing number of veterans that are utilizing the space and actually being involved and coming to see you? How is that ratio? Do you feel like that you're big enough over there? Just in general?
Like happens a lot of times with a new building, a new facility, when it gets completed, shortly after that, people often realize that, you know, we should have built this larger. Same thing at the Veterans Center. From day one, back in 2014, when we done or 2013, when we done our grand opening, and we started having events, we realized that it wasn't big enough. And it's a great building. It's served well, but we have overcrowding and have people sitting all over the place. And so we're having to go to a bigger venue, you know, to accommodate. So hopefully in this coming year, fiscal year, we can allocate some funds to, I know we've talked about it before, and even some drawings took place, but, and also along that line, Counselor, I have an idea about a veteran cemetery. One of these days, I'll go to House, but before that happens, I'd like to see a cemetery in the making. It's something that people have wanted, and so those are some things that probably we could look at as a group. Of course, with the support of the council and backing of the admin group, maybe those things will happen. Thanks for that question, because it's a true thing that we do need more space.
Yes, Mr. Secretary, I appreciate that. And just for the council's just general edification as well, that there are some big ticket items that we won't see on this budget, but I think will come in future years with the erosion of some of the bricks when you kind of move some things around out there. So there are some things that the Veterans Center is going to need. They might not be on this budget, but
Right.
but I know they'll be out. So, I mean, I hope we're not all surprised when we see those. But we appreciate everything that you do. I know it's packed over there. I would, we all want it to be the veteran, you know, the crown jewel of Native Indian country veteran centers and all that stuff, and it is, right? People are just amazed at what we have. We also know that we're outgrowing it, right? So it's just something to think about as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Given two possibilities, I'd rather have a crowded space when we have an event is to not have anybody over there. So we're blessed with that. We just need to work on accommodations, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move with Mr. Kevin Stretch with CCO.
Siona God, thanks for the applause. Galelega Jigadoha, I'm glad to be here, and if you'll turn to the Community and Culture Outreach in your hymnal, We can go over that if you have any questions. I think we have 44 currently community buildings, and we have 6 in the works, I believe. We're still trying to acquire some land or some property for a couple of them. So we're lucky that the council trusts us with overseeing the cemetery program, and as well as the other programs. But if you go to 10-10-925, that's our Housing Job Sustainability Communities Act funding. And so we're lucky to be able to use that to help the organizations, especially through the pandemic, to help build them, as well as help pay the utility costs. So anyway, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask.
Do we have any
Our budget is flat. Okay.
All right. Do we have any questions for Kevin? All right, looks like you're good to go.
Well,
Thank you, sir.
done.
I will. All right, let's, before we move out of the budgets for Office of the Chief, do we have anyone that has any specific questions on any of the budgets?
I don't have a question on the budget, but if I could ask a question. So the org chart between Chief of Staff and Secretary of State, what programs are you over and what programs is Shella going to be over? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Counselor, for that question. I directly oversee health services, human resources, IT, education, language, and facilities. And the remaining executive directors report either to Shella or to the other cabinet members.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
No? Victoria?
I'm sorry,
Candace?
write slowly. Would you mind repeating that?
Yes, ma'am. That's health services, which is, of course, the majority of our employees. We have human resources, IT or technology. We have education services, language services, and facilities with David Moore. And the remaining report either to Secretary of State Bolin or to the other cabinet members.
Thank you for that.
Yes. Yes, and we can, Secretary Bolin had a good suggestion. We will also email you which departments report to who. Yes, yes, ma'am.
All right.
But I will say, we work closely together, and we will answer questions from either side. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, we'll move to communications with Julie Hubbard.
Good morning. How's everyone this morning?
Good.
Our budget has remained fairly consistent. We have a staff of about 21. We're getting ready to onboard our 4th social media coordinator, which we're excited about. I think they're in the HR process. We just have a few positions that we've had in this past budget that we're continually trying to fill. But other than that, our budget has remained pretty consistent. If you guys have any questions, I can take those.
Do we have any questions for Julie? Candace?
I've been made aware from some employees who, and it's not necessarily out of the Office of Communication, but I think it does also have some bearing on the Office of Communication as well. It has come to my awareness that there has been a market analysis done for several positions, and there has been some adjustment in salary. And you mentioned that there was a flat budget. So I was wondering if that market analysis had an impact on existing employees and if that was going to be reflected like in a future budget modification or if the numbers that we're seeing are accurate.
Yeah.
The numbers in the budgets are accurate. The way that we have chosen to respond to those market analysis is on the backside through a new program that we will be backfilling in the Office of Financial Resources. Some of the budgets can absorb these increases and some of them can't. Now, going forward further into FY24, there may be some adjustments that are needed, but it will be down the road a little bit.
I think the rest of my questions related to that market analysis will probably need to be directed to HR. So thank you, Treasurer Taylor, for addressing that question. I just occurred to me as you made the statement flat budget. But I appreciate all the work that communications does. Approximately how many FTE are in communications?
We have like 21 employees, and then Dennis Six Killer is split with us and education.
Great, great. Well, I just have seen all the wonderful coverage and PR that even came out like immediately from the holiday. And whether we're looking at drone shots from from the powwow, which really gives you an idea of how immense that crowd was, to coverage of State of the Nation and other events that were live streamed.
When we hire employees that are very versatile, that can write, take photos, do video. I mean, so we try to just, almost be like a backpack journalist where we can do multiple things. But yeah, our staff had some great coverage. You did notice that aerial shot, that was Josh Newton. He took some drone shots on Saturday of the powwow. We had some really good TikTok, the OCO videos, just lots of great photos and video. So I'll take that back to our staff and let them know that you guys appreciated all the coverage.
Well, I just know that when we look at public relations, it's an ever-changing landscape. There are constantly new tools that are being introduced, whether we're talking about TikTok or whatever new social media, app that's on the horizon that we haven't heard of yet. And the staff does a wonderful job. I appreciate everything that's done. I often share items that are coming out of comms because you produce some really great information in terms of graphics as well that's really readable and accessible and helps engage our citizens. So I'm also, a beneficiary of the work being done in comms, and I just want to thank you and your staff for that excellent work. I appreciate the time, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we got any more questions for communication? All right, looks good. Thank you. All right, let's try to pick up the pace a little bit there. We got Judge Bartow with Supreme and Tribal Court.
Morning.
I'm getting us behind. Let's go. How are you, sir?
Doing good. How are y'all?
Oh, good.
We if you ignore the $10 million extra line item at the bottom, our budget's pretty flat. But I will go ahead and say, as far as that came from Department of Justice, and we're kind of wading through some of the stipulations that are placed on those, like anything that comes from the feds. But we're looking at spending a portion of it on a new court software system that will largely be online for filing across the reservation, for filing new cases, paying fees of any type, tickets, things like that, to keep people from having to call the court or make the trek all the way to Tahlequah. But any other questions, I would be happy to answer them.
All right, do we have any Joe?
Just real quick, when you guys update your budget, there's a bunch of TBDs in here, positions that are new in 2 different sections. Can you just write those titles out what they are? Because one's like $20 an hour, one's $17.50, but you have multiple of them.
Yeah.
So I figure if you know what the amount is, you know what the position is, just fill that in when you do the update.
Yeah, we'll do that.
All right, thank you.
All right, Johnny?
Sir, hey, thanks for coming in today. I think Joe or Councilman Deere there talked about someone on the line item of I think it's 1010805. It says that there's no changes in the significant changes, but then there's 2 new positions which are TBD, and then that kind of makes us wonder what those were going to be, and that there are changes. But and I know that you'll get on those, I'm not worried about that, but one of my primary questions is I know that we have the other vacant, we've only got 3 of the 4 district judge positions filled, correct? What are the thoughts on fill in that next one. I know that we need that next person. We've got that in the budget. It's a line item. We'll appropriate the funds. Man, we need to, I know that you're anxious to do that. What is your plan there?
I believe it's a part-time position that's still in the budget. We could definitely need it or use it. And if we're going to move into other types of courts or further courts, I know we've started like juvenile healing to wellness. We want to move into an adult, which I think we all do, that position would need to be filled. Yeah.
All right. Okay, Mr. Chair.
All right, any more questions? Oh, Kevin?
Judge, I wanted to ask kind of the same question of you that was asked to Secretary Crittenden. How do you feel your facilities are right now compared to how they're being filled? Do you believe that there needs to be an increase to our tribal courts there, a decrease? How are we doing? And if so, what would be your recommendation?
Are you talking about building-wise or staff or?
Both.
Okay. As far as buildings, I think that we just started criminal cases up in the Delaware District, which is in J behind the Sam Hyder Clinic, back in July. And if we're going to continue to open up other courthouses, that would have to be looked at in the near future and, or whenever council and administration decide that's where the nation needs to go. But as far as staffing, I think what we're looking at on the software and being largely online will help us not have to have as many staff in the buildings, especially if we're looking at outlying courthouses and other areas of the reservation. It'll help us from having to fully staff like you would see in a state court of having 15 clerks or something like that.
And I think you already answered this question in your presentation there, but the $10 million that was titled Mcgirt, do we know yet what the restrictions are on how that can be used, or could you present that to us at a later date?
I think one of the biggest things is no capital improvements, so, which we were kind of hoping for. But I can get you the specifics on that later.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Candace?
I'm sorry, I'm asking everybody questions. It's just that often these budget hearings, we get to hear from people that we never hear from. Like this is the only time that we really get to see you. And, well, not get to see you, we obviously, but it's the only time that you appear before council to discuss matters of the court particularly. As I was looking through the budget, I noticed that there was a new position for Director of Operations and under the accounting unit, the Tribal Courts Mcgirt. And I was just wondering if you might be able to share with us a little bit about what that Director of Operations, what they may be tasked with and what that position is going to.
So the thought on that is being low on judicial hours at this point, I don't have a lot of the time to actually go out and search and apply for things like healing to wellness court grants or helping find places to possibly establish new courts, all the day-to-day things that of administrative work that is going to come with increasing the court system and the McGirt-Hogner expansion era of the court system. And most of, so they'll still be taking direction from the judges, but I got to be in court to do a lot of things. And it'll also be a contact person for y'all, since you don't see us that often.
Great.
That can answer all these questions that come out throughout the year. But that's kind of the base of, and it's kind of evolving as we come up with the position, but that's the main deal on it.
Well, that sounds wonderful. I just had, like I said, a question about that position, and it sounds like it is something that is truly needed I know that I have had individuals out in District 2 who have reached out to me, and some who are not Cherokee, but who work in our courts, either as, attorneys, or they have appeared in the court, and they have ideas about expansions. And I know that, you guys through Mcgirt have seen a exponential increase in caseload, in, changes in the types of cases that are being heard. And so I understand that, growth takes time, responding to Mcgirt is going to be an ongoing process. So I'm excited to see that position and the potential that position holds, and I appreciate your indulging my question, and I appreciate the time, Chair.
Great question, great question. Joe?
Hey, just, Judge, as the cases go on in Tulsa, we see these numbers are having to come here with the tribal tickets. Are we looking at capital improvements, infrastructure for like a northern and a southern district? Because we sort of know it's coming, and I know staff would implode, but it would take time to build those or partner with somebody in that area to hold court those times where you've run the stats on where they're coming from to Telequa, to shorten that, maybe do tele-video courts.
I don't know if this is speaking out of turn or not, but with the amount of cases that we have, I would look at a northern, northwestern courthouse and another one in the south, and possibly one to our east. Other than that, I don't think there needs to be one in every county. If you think about how the court systems are set up in every state, we have 77 counties because there had to be within a certain distance of someone could walk or drive and actually get there in a reasonable amount of time. Those were set up when we were on horses or walking or in a wagon. We're not in those time frames anymore. For a rural area, we have very good transportation systems for this type of area. And we're really good at the court. If they call and say, hey, I can't get a ride, we'll give them a new court date. So I think a few more districts, if that's what the council and the nation thinks where we need to go, would be sufficient.
Yeah, because we're thinking Owasso, Claremore, Northern District, because Owasso is going to be that Tulsa County, and then sort of looking at way down there by EO, Vian, Sallisaw area too.
And I'll just say, this is the nation's court. Then you have given me a role within it.
Yep.
Whatever the nation wants to do, I'll be the steward of your money to help push that forward how y'all want to do it.
The reason why we bring that up, or I bring that up, is because we're growing so fast, and we know you will get overwhelmed eventually in that court, and to be able to spread that out, and that way we can take care of it efficiently. So that's our question arise, and we'll get to that later. I just want to see what your thoughts were, because you're in the courthouse.
I might need to come down here more often.
Yeah. Well, it's good seeing you.
Kevin?
Yeah, Judge, I just want to say, I don't think you're speaking out of turn. I've seen it firsthand. There needs to be a northwestern courthouse, at least northern, due to just the distance and everything that's involved with people attending court here in Tahlequah. So I agree with you completely. We need to start looking at that and start focusing on implementing that into a budget.
Speaker?
I think maybe one of the biggest things about this whole deal is who is housing our prisoners, because not everybody's housing our prisoners. I think we've only got 2 places right now because of overcrowding to take our prisoners. So I don't care where you put it. If you're not where we're housing the prisoners, you're still going to have the same problem. In Jay, that building was built as a community center. It wasn't built as a courthouse. I've seen it, and you can make it function as that, but it's not a courthouse. So, until we can find more of a reliable place to keep our prisoners, that's a big issue, because a lot of counties won't take them now.
EO?
Yes, just a future reference, District 4, 5, and 6, we have a brand-new courtroom in Vian, and we would gladly work to save all those people from the eastern part all over, it would save a lot of mileage from people. We would gladly work with you. We'll visit.
All right, thank you.
All right, we have any more questions for Judge? All right, looks like we're good, sir. Thank
All
you.
right, thank y'all.
All right, let's move over to boards and commission. Ginger Reeves, are you here?
Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good.
I believe you have the Arkansas Riverbed Authority budget in front of you. It is flatlined. Do you have any questions? I'll be happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions for Ginger? No, no questions for Ginger? All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's go ahead and adjourn for a quick break, 5-10 minutes. Does that work for everyone? All right, thank you. What's that? 5 or 10? I'd like a 5-minute, but if you need 10 minutes, let's go. Starting off with the Office of the Attorney General. We got, Chad Harsha here. How are you, sir?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the council. This is a relatively new budget for me, but I think that talked this budget over with our staff internally, and we think it's sufficient for our needs going forward. So if there's any questions anyone has, I can answer them to the best of my ability.
All right, do we have any questions for AG?
Attorney General, thank you for coming here this morning. And you can, I know that this is a new budget for you, obviously, with everything that's been going on, so you can come back to me with this later. But under the FTEs, I saw that you all have 17 vacancies, and would you like to speak as to any of those, what's needed, what's not, and whether or not you know if any of those are, how they're funded?
Sure. So we, as of right now, we have 19 lawyers employed in our office and 25 support staff positions. We do have a number of vacancies. We have 2, I think, that we're getting ready to move forward on a hiring selection on for attorneys, and then we have a number other for support staff. I think we've ramped up staff, especially since Mcgirt, but we do continually have postings available, and we try to find the right person, the right qualified person for the job, and we look forward to kind of amping up our recruitment going forward.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
All right, any more questions for AG? Doesn't look like we have any. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on over to Education Services. Do we have Director Mark Vance here?
Good morning.
Morning. All right, we have any questions? All right, Candace.
I know that the budget for Sequoia High School is typically, Cherokee Nation typically has to add to that each year. Do we foresee that being the case for FY24?
No, our budgets, is still be the same, Dr. Teehee.
Okay. And we have several capital improvements that are happening at the school. So
Yes.
as we move forward, are we going to see those projects come to completion in FY24, or do we have a longer timeline on those?
We have the timeline for the football field to be completed. That's it. Then we'll have next phase next time.
Okay.
So-
All right. What's included in that next phase?
We'll have the bleachers in phase 2, and then a new academic building, and then an indoor facility. But that's down the line.
Okay, well, great. I know that, with Sequoia High School being our school, it is Cherokee Nation School, and it is one of a handful of tribally run and operated schools in the nation. So I just like to see the fact that we are investing in our students there at Sequoia and improving the facilities, some of which have some significant age.
Yes, yes.
And have the increase in scholarships as we move forward. Would you remind us again of where that scholarship increase is at currently?
It's $2,250 per semester. Mhm.
Okay.
And the next year it'll be $2,500. So right now it's $2,250.
Okay,
for this
so for
budget.
FY24, it'll be $2,250.
Yes.
And then we will increase it again to $2,500. Is that per semester or is that for the year?
It's per semester.
Per semester. Well, that is great. As education costs continue to increase, I know that is a huge portion of the education services budget. And I think it's a great development for our students, and I appreciate the work that you and your staff do in education.
Thank you, Dr. T.
Thank you for the time.
Danny?
Mark, is Sequoia considered to be a private school?
It's private, public, yes.
So we don't get any public funds from the state?
Yes, we do.
We
Some.
do get state funds for
Yes.
each kid, like, what is it, $3,100 or whatever it is a year for each kid we have?
Yeah. No, we don't. We don't get any state funds.
So we don't
It's
get any
BIE.
state funds at all.
Right.
So the funding of the Sequoia either comes from the federal government through the BIA and/or it comes through the Cherokee Nation?
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any more questions? All right, doesn't look like any. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for your time.
All right, let's move on over to Health Services. Do we have Dr. Jones here? And Amy Sams?
Good morning.
Morning.
Well, I guess you guys have had a chance to review our budget, and we're here to answer any questions, so.
All right, do we have any questions for Dr. Jones? I know we've had some initial discussions amongst some of us. Sasha?
Good morning, Dr. Jones.
Good morning.
Okay, so I'm fairly new here, so I'm trying to understand how this works, if you can help
Sure.
explain. So, looking at the carryover from the past fiscal years,
Mhm.
am I understanding this correctly, that we have 1.2 billion carryover?
1.2 billion carryover?
Mhm. Or is it from FY '22, it's 4.2 carried over from the 8.5?
Now, some of the carryover is ARPA money,
Mhm.
so be aware of that. Some of that's ARPA money, some of the carryover will be left over from money not expended for line items that didn't get totally used up. I'm not sure for that amount. Amy, can you-
I don't know that I have that amount with me, actually, but a lot of our carryover is related to our third-party revenue growth. We've just not grown into that spending level yet, and those funds are used for capital projects, and also they'll be used to service the debt related to the new hospital.
Okay. Is
So
that
if we plan on a certain amount of funding that we actually put into the budget, but we exceed that, that's part of that carryover also.
Okay. So kind of leading into my next question, looking at contract health services, I have a carryover of 99.9 million. Does that sound correct?
Are you talking about on a specific budget or in total?
In total.
That would probably, I think it would be greater than that, actually, from the dividend fund.
Mhm.
And I apologize, I didn't bring carryover numbers with me today, but that, the 5% dividend is legislated to come to health for contract health services for Cherokees, and that's all that those funds can be used for. So if we don't expend the full amount of those funds during the course of the fiscal year, those funds remain a carryover that we can budget in future years for that purpose.
Because I was looking at like the past, what I could see on the health committee meetings. We have a wonderful approval rating for contract health services. Commend you for that. But if we have this in our carryover, how do we plan to increase serving our patients?
So let me address that a little bit. So part of the reason we have a carryover is because we're keeping more patients at home closer than we've ever done that before. So that means patients aren't being transferred out. Contract health doesn't have to pick up those services. So that's part of what that carryover is, because of our commitment to trying to keep people closer to home, okay? And we also know that as we add providers, every provider is going to have more contract health services associated with referrals. So we have to kind of be proactive in that budget and making sure we keep money appropriated because of the growth we're going to have the next year. So that's why some of that is not expended. We always budget a little more than what we need, just so for that reason. We don't know at what point we're going to add a physician or what point we're going to look at adding service lines, and with all those come more contract health dollars and usage. So it is, but the main thing you have to look at is our approval rating and how many times we're asked to use those dollars and how many times we use those dollars. And that approval ratings floats around 97, 98% at all times.
Thank you.
Okay. Would you be able to send us those carryover numbers and just email them to Gail or someone? That way we can just kind of review those.
Yeah, and and like I said, some of those carryover numbers go to servicing debt,
Right.
servicing the things that we've done, the expansions that we're doing. So it's part of that ongoing process and planning for the next 3 to 5 years.
Right, right. Okay. Johnny?
Just for my clarification, that's a great question. So we had, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this conversation because this is a new one on me as well. So we're saying that we had almost $100 million, over $100 million in carryover for contract health. Is that what because she said there was 90, Councilwoman Qual said there was 99, and you said there was probably more than that. So more than that would be 100 million. So we're saying that we have 100 million left over in carryover for contract health.
I apologize, not 100 million, no. We do have carryover related to the 5% fund, and then any carryover on the IHS fund just goes back into the main pool of IHS carryover. It's not earmarked for contract health. But as Dr. Jones mentioned, we're meeting the needs of our contract health program at this time. And another thing that has really helped with the expenditure in contract health is Medicaid expansion. Because a lot of our patients who we were paying for those services before are now covered by Medicaid. And if the provider accepts Medicaid, that's payment in full. So there is no future liability to Cherokee Nation for sending that patient for that service.
Because we're the payer of last resort.
Sure.
The other piece of this that also helps that budget is that we are very aggressive in helping find resources for patients who have no resources. So we're very aggressive in that because, again, we're the payer of last resort and we want to stretch that money as far as it'll go. So if we have surplus, that's not been the case in the past. In the past, that budget has always been right on the verge of not being where it needs to be. We've gotten a lot healthier in the last couple of years. As a result, this money is continuing to be there if we need it and for our patients when they need it.
Okay, that's a good answer, and that was a very good question. I would, and I don't see this number in here, but I would be interested, and I think, Mr. Chair, you mentioned this earlier, I would like to know, on that legislative 5% designated for contract health, where we are at the end of this fiscal year on that number. And if you would provide that, that would be great. I know that it's kind of hard to dig that out of there, and it's all kind of together, but that'd be a good information. Great question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Do we have any more questions for Dr. Jones? Oh, Candace?
Well, thank you for joining us this morning. I know that there is a lot of important work that's being done in health services, and I also understand that there is, in general, still challenges in staffing that we continue to face. I was on the HR website just kind of looking around, and I noticed that there are positions at health that have incentives for hiring. And I was wondering if you might be able to speak to kind of the vacancy rate that you currently have there at Health Services, and whether or not some of these measures at that recruitment have been able to kind of address those vacancy rates, and also retention rates of existing staff.
So currently, we have around 400, I wrote some numbers down for you, 427 vacant positions. About 25% of that is nursing. Nursing shortages all over the nation. It's not unique to us. It's a thing that we're all fighting. We have put in some creative measures, as you just mentioned, for retention and for sign-on bonuses to try to get us into the onto the playing field with the rest of the nation, and especially in our immediate area for recruiting and the retention, because we do have programs that if you stay for a number of years in your position, we're going to give you a retention bonus. So there is a lot of hard work going on in HR. They are working on some things that are going to open some doors for us. I'm not ready to speak on those yet, because when they come forward, you guys will be the first to hear about it, I'm sure. I just know that we have had multiple meetings about where our deficiencies are and what we can do to alleviate the pressure on those areas. I think the market will come down in the future. I think we went through the COVID years, and due to the nature of how things, the supply and demand went, it created a gap in how nurses are paid and how they are expecting to be paid. We as a government don't move really fast into those competitive markets, so we've had to take some time to do some things to make us more competitive, and that stuff will be coming out soon. So, and I think that vacancy rate will go down considerably when that happens.
Well, I know that overall healthcare in the U.S. is, I would say, in some ways in crisis. And we were facing these challenges even prior to COVID, and COVID just exacerbated the existing pressures that our healthcare population, our healthcare workers and individuals who are seeking healthcare face. I would say that Cherokee Nation Health Systems is doing a stellar job in the midst of what I would call a broken U.S. healthcare system. So I commend the work that's being done by Cherokee Nation Health Systems. There's always a place to improve. And I'm glad to hear that we are hoping to decrease the percentage of vacancies that we have at Cherokee Nation Health Systems. And I look forward to hearing about some of these innovative recruitment practices that we may be looking at down the road.
Yeah, and let me be clear, the vacancies that we have are actually vacancies. We don't count when we have a contract person come in and fill a void. That does not count and remove from the vacancy list. So it's not in a critical phase where we're not filling shifts or not having enough people on to treat or take care of our patients. Because we do have those contract agencies that we work with to fill those in. Now, is that the way we want to do it? No. I mean, that's not the ideal situation. We want our own citizens working in our healthcare systems so that we can have people who actually live in the communities, working in those communities. That creates a part of accountability that we really would like to see throughout the healthcare system. But it doesn't take away from those vacancies. So if we fill it with an agency person, that vacancy still stays on the book till we get a full-time person in there. So it's a little misleading from the standpoint of are we short those shifts to be able to treat and take care of our patients? The answer to that is no. We are working very hard to make sure all of our shifts are full. But it's just a necessity of the times right now of how we have to do that.
Well, I really do appreciate that clarification because there is a lot of contract workers who are in the Cherokee Nation Health System, traveling nurses and things like that. That's something I have encountered. So it is good to know that you are still seeking to replace those contract positions with full-time positions that are part of our, say, Cherokee Nation family of employees.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, we are, it's kind of like a working trial too. You get a contract person in that's maybe from the area that's been traveling and they're looking to stop traveling, then that gives us a little bit of a working interview before we actually recruit that person. So we have found some of our full-time staff and some of them are waiting to see what happens with in the future with some of these things that we've been working on with HR.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Jones. And I believe you have, is it Amy Sams with you?
Yeah.
Okay, and it is Sams?
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry, I should have
wonderful.
introduced her. She's basically our CFO for health. She takes care of the financial stuff and keeps us all going in the right direction. So I have to lean on her a lot, as you can tell with this thick packet that you have in front of you.
So do you also have your own HR and IT over there at
No,
Health?
we have an IT department that works under the overall IT department. We have people that are dedicated to health, and we work closely with them, with Mr. Gord. But no, we do not have HR. We are working with Sam Ms. Hendricks, to put some HR personnel embedded into the health system so that they will be still under HR, but embedded with us so that they can deal with some of our day-to-day uniqueness.
Right, and I would assume there's a lot of specialized issues that go along with health, HR, and IT, so that sounds absolutely appropriate.
Yeah. And that market moves very fast. Healthcare markets move very fast, and typically in the past, we haven't been able to keep up with those markets, but we're working on some tools that are going to allow us to do that and be better at that moving forward. So it's just a matter of time before we're right where we need to be with HR.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the time, Chair.
Danny?
Dr. Jones, I think you kind of pretty much answered mine, because as we going through here, you got 562 vacancies and you've got requests for 168 and a half. Of course, we don't want to look at the half a person, so we'll bump that up to 169. But in the budget, this is probably for her, in the budget, each year, how do you take for the budget? Because I know, looking at your budget, nurses make so much, doctors make so much, all these people make so much. So does this carry it on every time? Then you add another 169 to that budgets it even more higher?
So let me give you a little idea how this works. So, number one, we have over 350 job descriptions. So it's not every job description's the same. We have all this uniqueness in different service lines, different needs, and different local areas for the needs that they have in those areas. So I asked a couple years ago, we went through a process where every clinic administrator and every senior director came up with a staffing model. And that staffing model is built on the next year, on our future of where we're going and expanding. For example, if you hire a physician, you don't just hire a physician, you have to hire the team around that physician to help support that physician. So we've created staffing models in just about every discipline so that we know if we hire this person, we have to also include these people. So that we're not just putting someone out there with no support and expecting them to be successful. They're not going to be successful unless they have the team around them to help them be successful. So that's what goes into these things, and we're also looking at the expansions that we've had over the last year. You know, we've built on to several of the clinics. We've added radiology. We've added things that weren't included, but we had the opportunity to do that with the monies that became available. So now we're catching up on those staffing deals. So it's not just a wish list. It's actually trying to plan, and we may not fill some of those positions right on October 1st, but we have the ability to grow, so we're not coming back and saying, hey, we need. We're trying to plan and give you guys some explanation to how we're planning ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah. Johnny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm back again, Doc Jones. Something that you said earlier when Councilwoman Teehee was asking a question, I'd just like a clarification if I could. Because we're sitting here preparing to fund basically, what is it, total FTE 6,232, Cherokee nationwide. 562 of those are vacant in health services, and 169 of those are new. So all that's coming together. So we're asking to fund that now. And you just said a little bit ago that when you bring people on contract, they don't come out of these FTE numbers. So where is the pot of money that you're paying those people for? Because we are obligating and appropriating money for that open position. And then when you fill that with a contractor, you're obviously not pulling that money from the FTE pot. You're pulling that money from some other contractor payment pool.
Right.
You would almost have to be.
Right.
Where exactly is that money coming from? And why would we not then reprogram funds? Why didn't we not go back to modify that budget and reprogram funds to pay that contracted position? Because it gives the appearance that over the course of a year, we're hiring a bunch of people on contract, but yet we keep appropriating money to 750 positions that are not being filled. Does that make? Do you see where I'm going with that?
Actually, that number it fluctuates up
Sure.
and down at the time, because right now, as of this morning, 427 vacancies. So I had them run that number this morning just to see what the difference was, because people are always in process of being hired, or it's in the process somewhere. So just to be clear on that, and a total of 3,278 positions in health. When you add the new ones that we're adding this next year. But yes, we do have a money that we use for contracts. Those contract services aren't for a year. Those are very short-term contracts, just to fill that need and as we're continuing to recruit. So that's not something that we have money to shift from one place to the other. We have to have that because we don't know from time to time what those needs are going to be.
Right, I understand. I'm just asking where is that line item that you pull money from to pay for to the contract? That's what I'm asking, so I can see what that.
Yeah, there is a line item called locum tenens, and we do budget money in that line item at each of our health facilities. The amount that's budgeted in the outpatient world is not near as substantial as the hospital, because of course that's a 24/7 operation and we have to have those staff there. As we do move through the fiscal year, if we have vacancies that linger for a long time and we've had to rely on contractors more than we thought we would, we often do budget realignments where we've reduced the percentage of those vacant positions that are open and move that money down to that locum tenens line item to cover that contract cost. But, we're always hopeful when we do our comprehensive budgets that we're gonna fill all these positions. We budget them all at 100%, but then as we move through the year, if that's just not able to happen, and we are spending more in contracts than what we have budgeted, we do make that budget adjustment throughout the year.
Understood. Thank you. One last thing. When we talked earlier about the market analysis for payment of our different healthcare positions, is there a report of that we could receive on who was, where that net was cast and who was talked to? And it would be interesting to see how we match up on those different areas.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a report generated. That would be probably an HR question.
Do you know if we talked to, did we just talk to tribal healthcare systems? Did we talk to I would be interested to know kind of where we stacked up in Hillcrest and the St. Francis's and all these folks, and of course, the Choctaws and all those folks. So if there is some kind of report generated from that, which I would assume that there would need to be something, it would be neat I would be interested in kind of seeing where we were.
Yeah. Again, we don't do our own market analysis. We don't do any of that type of work. That comes out of HR, so that'd be a question maybe to ask them.
All right, HR, get ready. All right. All right, Mr. Chair, thank you.
All right, Joe?
Mine was along the same lines as his about the positions and if you were taking FTE money to pay for contracts. You said we had 427 vacant positions. How many contract employee positions do we have right now?
I don't know it exactly. You're talking about contract. There's two different terms for contracts. So all of our providers are on contracts. So we say that's a contract, but that is an FTE that's filled with a contracted employee. But when I say we're filling those with agency, that's a different type of contract, where short-term position, where it's just filling that because we have that need, and usually those are 3 or 6 month long commitments.
Is that amount in here where it shows how much that is?
Under locums.
Locums, right? And then can you give us the providers, how many providers there are?
How many providers there are across
Under
our
contract.
system?
Yeah.
I don't know that off the top of my head.
I was just saying, you can email it to us.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, when you count dental, pharmacy, medical providers, and behavioral health, I know this number because I'm doing them right now, 362 contracts that providers across our system of people that will actually be doing services for our patients, and that does not include any support staff. That includes physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech pathology, all those. So 362 currently.
Okay.
And those are the employed ones. They just
Yeah,
have to
those
be
are
on an
full-time.
employment contract.
Full-time positions filled as of today.
So you finding more dental or nursing side are under contract, like they won't?
Nursing is not.
Nursing, I know, is crazy.
Yeah, nursing is not under contract with us, like we're talking about, but we have more agency contracts that we utilize for nursing. Of those 427, 101 of those vacancies are nursing. 25% of our vacancies in our health system are nursing.
Are those the ones that they consider traveling nurses working for those agencies?
Yes. And sometimes it's people who have retired and they just want a part-time job. So they work through an agency to get a little work here and a little work there. So it's different circumstances, but the agencies are who we depend on to find those people and bring them in when we have those needs.
Okay, so how often do you readjust your line item when you need to take off FTE and the money to cover some of the contracts?
We usually don't do any of that until the latter half of the fiscal year.
Right, just to
It
see
just
where you're
kind of
at.
depends on the budget situation. I mean, we had a lot of vacancies at Hastings over the last year, and so we had to make some adjustments there. If it doesn't create a budget issue, we don't necessarily adjust it. We'll just leave the money in those salary line items. But if we see that we're overspending in our contracts line item, we will make those adjustments as needed.
Okay.
And
Thanks, Josh.
we've seen a decrease in contract agencies since COVID. I mean, that's something that we've been focused on and trying to make sure that we're doing the best to give our providers the continuous support that they need. Because even our providers, when it comes to contract agency nurses, we have some really good ones out there, but it's not a consistent person standing at their side. And so they want that consistent person. So they've expressed that to us, and we continue to work for how we can fill those positions.
Okay. All right, thank you.
EO?
Joe, did you have something?
Yes. one thing to follow up on Mr. Deere. You're actually budgeting at the accounting unit level, so if they go over on their contract services line item, it's not gonna get kicked out as long as they have money in their total budget. So, and obviously, that's part of the backup is the FTEs and all that kind of stuff, and they want to adjust it, try to keep it in line as well as they could. But if we, tribal council, we overspend our food line item, it's not going to get kicked out as long as we are good on our total budget. So, but back to Councilor Qualls, Black Fox Qualls on the contract health. As an example, in '22, the budget was 6.7 million, and we spent 8 million. But that's because that dividend is a budget of, 5% of the total. So more money came in from our dividends, they were able to spend more. For '23, the budget's 8.5 million. They've spent a little less than 5 million so far. So that's a fluctuating number. But as far as what's getting budgeted, there is no budgeted carryover. It's all an estimate of the actual expected to come in for that year. So with those being, correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, but with those being more restrictive contract funds, those would get spent if the patient's eligible before the IHS funds. That's right.
That's right.
So what would generally be carryover would be in IHS more so than the 5% contract dividends.
We actually do have a decent carryover there because I can't recall what fiscal year it was where the dividends were abnormally.
21.
Right, 21.
In 2021, the dividend was abnormally large. And so it was much greater than what we had budgeted. So those funds never got spent, so to speak. So
they're not actually budgeted.
Yeah, and they're not actually budgeted right now.
And then we also had some ARPA money that was specifically for contract help that was put into that account also. So, but that money is very restrictive, and as they said, and there's a progression of how it's spent. So it's first payer of last resort, so we collect where we can, and then it goes to tribal funds and IHS funds, depending on who the patient is, where they're located, because we all know through our discussions with Claremore that there are geographic locations where our funds kick in and where their funds kick in, and then we pick up the tab at the end.
All right. Kevin?
Doctor, we were provided a sheet this morning from Treasurer Taylor, which had a breakdown of revenue sources, and the pie chart showed 70% of our revenue sources come from the federal government, I think 24.8% from IHS. So I'm just assuming from reading that for the first time, and I may be assuming wrong, but I'm assuming that these vacancies and new positions that you've listed in here, a majority of those, or at least a percentage of those, are going to be either federally funded or compact funded, just based upon reviewing that chart. So my question to you would be, are you able to provide a report to us which shows how many of those positions are federally or compact funded and how many of them are not?
Well,
We would be able to do that, yes. The vast majority of them are compact funded. We do have a few indirect cost funded activities in health, such as the Office of the Executive Director, and we have a health recruitment office. And so we have a few offices that are funded with indirect cost funds. But I would guess out of the new request, 99% of those are out of federal and compact dollars, which also includes our third-party collections. That's kind of all rolled in together. So our third-party, our estimated revenue collections for the year are, in this budget, are $345 million. And that's just from billing activities at our health centers and hospitals.
Sure, okay, thank you. And I'm not picking on you. That's something that's sitting in my head, and who's ever watching us through the eye in the sky, you're probably gonna get the same question from me later today. So I appreciate you answering that, thank you.
And part of that third-party revenue has continued to grow, and because that's continued to grow, has allowed us to do service lines that we weren't able to do 3 years ago, 5 years ago, because that money is turned right back into health services, and we turn that money into more services. So better access and more providers. That's how we fund all that, so.
Danny?
Doc, one last, out of the 6,000 and some employees that the nation employs, can you give us kind of a number about how many is in health?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I can, about 3,275.
Wow. I knew you.
We looked at that this morning.
That's, I'd heard an estimate, and I just wanted to, 3,275 out of the 6,000 people you guys take care of.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
All right, any last questions? All right, looks like we're good to go.
Dora.
Oh, Dora.
I don't have a question, but if everyone else is done with their questions, I would, Mr. Chair, like to make a motion to just skip the 11 o'clock break.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Everyone else? All right, we'll get got a
Thank you.
motion and a second. Everyone good? All right, we'll skip that break, but thank you, Dr.
All right,
Jones.
thank you,
Amy.
guys.
All right, we'll move on over to financial resource with Treasurer Taylor and Jamie Cope.
Good morning, Tribal Council, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair. I'm Jamie Cole, Cherokee Nation Controller. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have relating to Financial Resources FY24 budget request.
Okay. Do we have any questions for financial resources? Don't look like it. Thank you, sir. Appreciate y'all. All right, let's move on over to transportation and infrastructure. Mr. Michael Lynn.
Good morning. Want to kind of give a brief overview of our budget and then answer any questions you guys may have. We've currently got about 56, 57 employees on our staff. We have funding sources all the way from our tribal general fund, motor fuel tax, motor vehicle tax, indirect cost, quite a bit of U.S. Department of Transportation funds, Indian Health Service funding, and some Federal Transit Administration funding, and I think that covers about everything that we have. Our budget for 24 is relatively flat as compared to 23. And Mr. Chair, I'd be glad to answer any questions you guys may have.
All right, do we have any questions for Mr. Lynn?
No, I just got
All right. go
I just
Joe.
want to say, Mike, you guys, this last year and every year, last 4 years we've been involved, your guys do an amazing job, not just you, but your whole staff and budgets being very quick on responding when we needed stuff as far as my district and other people. But I thought I'd just tell your guys to tell them thank you for the work they do, because we never see them, but we always see you.
Absolutely.
So if you could relay that message for me, I appreciate it.
Certainly will, and thank you for that comment. We've got a great team that we work with, and I know, like you say, it's often me that you see standing up here, but I've got a good group of folks behind me. And speaking of that, I did want to introduce Billy Hicks. Billy wasn't able to be at our tribal council orientation that we gave here a few weeks back. He was at a meeting, so I wanted to introduce Billy Hicks. He's our senior director of our environmental health, sanitation facilities construction program. And I also have with me next to him is Jackie Reese. She keeps me in line. She handles all of our budgets and all of the administrative tasks for the department. So I want to introduce those folks to you. Andy wasn't able to be here today. He was scheduled off, but you guys met him the other day at the council orientation. So,
All right, do we have any questions? All right, looks like we're good to go.
All right, very good.
Appreciate
Thank you.
y'all.
Yes.
Billy, should you stick around just for a second?
All right, let's move on over to human resources. Samantha Hendricks.
Make sure the mic's on this time. So how are you? Good morning. So I want to say you have my report. It's so used to coming up and saying that side, but actually you have my budget. So I'll just go ahead and touch on a couple of things, and I know we have quite a few questions, so I'll be happy to try to answer as many as I can. So on the Employee Engagement Department, that is a new department that we established last year. We did have an increase of $187,000. That's due to space costs. We actually moved the offices where we had people in 3 and 4 at a time in an office, so we moved them to a different location that increased the space cost. We are looking at making another change on that. That was a temporary spot, and we're looking at making a change to another location, so that will be able to help with that space cost also. So as far as on the human resources, we had an increase in contract services to $272,000. That was increased because we have increases in staff that we've hired in reference to background and drug screens. So we had to increase our increased cost was our contract services. We did have a few people that we've had some turnover in HR, so that's allowed us to have some increases in our equipment cost. And then also we've had a small increase in our recruitment. So everything's been fairly minimal, but there has been an increase in the human resource piece. I understand that there's been many questions about staffing and updates, and there was questions about some of the changes that have happened recently as far as with the swearing in of last Friday. So I'll be happy to get some updated org charts to you. Once we have those done, we'll be working very diligently to get those done. So we want to make sure we get you the most updated one. Obviously, the budget was submitted way before this time, which I think has been mentioned in these meetings, and so we'll get those updated org charts to you as quickly as we can. So with that, and I know we'll have questions, so I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Do we have any questions for Candace? Don't even raise your hand.
I didn't even have to raise my hand that time. Well, thank you for joining us this morning, Samantha. I know that human resources is a ongoing challenge, with, I understand there have been a lot of challenges to hiring since COVID. And I know that you and your staff have looked at, innovative ways to streamline existing processes and speed things up. I know that that's an ongoing battle that you and your staff fight, and we appreciate it. There was a little bit of a discussion about the market analysis and the way that that's being implemented. And thankfully, Treasurer Taylor was able to offer some clarification on how that is looking with the budgets. But I was wondering how staff are being notified about those market analysis changes and those salary changes. Being a council person for District 2, I encounter a lot of employees and they'll kind of, make off the cuff remarks or, saying, the market analysis shows X is happening with my salary, but I'm not sure why that is. So I was just kind of wondering how those budget changes were being pushed out to staff in terms of explanations. Because I'm sure that there are a number of staff members who have questions related to those.
Sure, absolutely. And I can tell you that we've been working very diligent on this piece of it. It's nothing new. I mean, we do market service analysis pretty much all the time as far as compensation. But we do have an announcement that is prepared to go out in some of the recent things that have been kind of brought up. We plan to announce it on 9/7. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. I hate to get ahead of the official announcement on that piece of it, but I'll be more than happy to answer questions offline in reference to it. So.
Oh, sure. And, I think my question was more of a generality in that, is there an explanation that is going to be disseminated to staff who, and maybe not even just staff who are impacted by the market changes, but to kind of the staff in the department where the market changes are taking place.
And we do plan to definitely notify them if there's been a change or not a change in reference to their base compensation. So, but yes, we do have that planned. We were ready for the announcement to go first, and then we'll definitely reach out to them and let them know.
Okay, all right. Well, like I said, I understand that, especially for some of our hard-to-fill positions, recruitment is an ongoing challenge, and I appreciate the work being done by you and your staff to shorten those response times, to shorten hiring times, and to get people placed more quickly in a really competitive job market.
Thank you. The team is doing a great job. They've really stepped up and brought a lot of change to HR. So very much looking forward to working with them next year. So it'll be great. So.
Great. Well, thank you for the time, Chair.
Joe?
I know one of your items, it's the CHS sponsorship program. Can you tell us about that?
Which one? Which one do you have?
CHS sponsorship program?
CHS sponsorship program.
Yep.
I'd have
It's
to
in your
look at.
accounting unit. It's 332-4210. It talks about contract health services for Indian Services eligible patients who live within the contract health service delivery. This program funds insurance policy premiums.
that's probably in our benefits department, but to get more
Yeah.
detailed, I'd probably have to get you some more information on that piece of it, so.
Because that's all it says. It's a one-liner.
So let me, I focused in on the things I was increasing, so let me get an answer for you on that.
Yeah, because this was decreased by 50%. Initially it was 432,000, and now it's 216.
And it could be that we did have all of this information. It could be this part of it too, but I'll definitely get you an answer. But we split up, our benefits department actually answered up through our HR department.
Right.
And so what we did is when we did an employee engagement department, we actually realigned those to fit under that employee engagement department. So it could be a decrease in that, but an increase in others. But let me get you a definite answer on that piece.
Yeah, I just thought it was any contract health and human resources and
Yeah, it's kind of
paying
odd,
premium.
yeah.
It's sort of weird, but yeah, okay. All right, thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Johnny?
Ms. Hendricks, thanks for being here today.
Oh, thank
You
you.
heard us talk a little earlier about that, for our pay and, the market analysis and all that. Is there a report for that?
There is, and I know what we've submitted that information to finance. We've worked very closely with them.
Okay.
And so, yes.
If we could get that, that'd be great. And I just have one question on the payroll worksheet, and it just caught my eye, but the very first position on one of the payroll worksheets says Performance Incentive Award. Is that is a person? That is a job title?
That is not a person. That is not a person.
Well,
You'll fi-
because it has an hourly pay, and it has fringe benefits and all that neat stuff. Can you explain that one for me a little bit?
The performance incentive is something that we give to the employees in each department. Each department budgeted, and you may need to help me a little bit with this, but that is where we budgeted actually those performance incentives, which is where somebody does a good job. Then the executive directors have an opportunity to, provide them with a little incentive. And so,
Totally understand, agree 1,000%. It just caught my eye that we would be listing it on the payroll worksheet as an individual position. That's
Sure.
a little bit strange to me, but I'll leave that for the chair to
Yeah.
get involved in. Thank you, ma'am.
I'll say, just coming from financial resources, I'm sure it's some of the coding, because if you list every position down on that payroll with the payroll incentive, because not all of them are going to qualify for it. Am I correct?
right, yeah,
I'm going to have Jamie speak to it.
okay.
He's a little otherwise entertained. Can you speak to the payroll incentives are listed, they appear to be like a job position, and we're just curious.
Yeah.
Break that out that way.
Can I see you now?
Well, I think it's overall with all the departments.
It's coded as like an individual line instead of like broken out by position, which we know with incentives,
Sure, my
they,
guess is we're trying to get to an amount that
Yeah.
they expect that they will award. Of course, that's not known at this time.
you're right.
But we do apply fringe costs because we do have employer share of FICA and those sorts of things. So that would be applied to that payroll payment as well, so.
Jody?
Back to your question on the contract health deal that's through Human Resources. And I'm sure Amy will correct me if I'm wrong on this, but if I recall, that is for, Cherokee Nation is self-insured on health insurance over a certain level. And for employees that have major health issues, I think this covers some extended insurance. It's cheaper to pay their premiums than it is to let it flow through on our health insurance. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, but
Thank you.
she'll get some verification on that, so.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any more questions for Samantha? All right, looks like we're good. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
See, I think we're a little ahead of schedule. I was going to say, is David Moore here? Oh, there he is. All right.
Well, I was prepared to say good afternoon, but I get to say good morning. I know everybody's probably still in a little bit of a hangover from the holiday, but hang on, this Cherokee Nation, here we go with budgets. But there's been no significant change in our budgets. The capital improvements budget fluctuates with projects as they come in and come out. we've added a few employees over the last year in facilities due to the growth of the buildings we own, square footage. A year ago, we were about 40, I think it's 41 buildings. Now we're a little over 60. So we're growing and accumulating space. So if there's any questions, I'll try my best to answer them.
All right, we have any questions for David? Joe?
Budget, Catoosa Child Development Center in there, but you know when it's gonna bid?
Which part of it?
It, just the whole thing, the Child Development Center. I'll get with you
You got
afterwards.
me,
It's in
yeah.
here an item.
Well, is that the prior?
No, Catoosa Child Development
Okay,
Center.
yeah, I'll follow up on you on that one.
All right, thanks.
I don't know exactly where that one's at.
I just didn't know if you were bidding it yet,
Yeah,
because
no,
there's a
not yet.
budget amount, probably an engineer's estimate, so,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, thanks, Josh.
All right, any more questions? All right, doesn't look like we have any.
Thank you. Yeah, you got me on that.
All right, do we have anyone here from Commerce Services? Not here, so do we have anyone here that's supposed to be presenting this afternoon? We can squeeze in. All right, Marshall.
Good morning. I just don't sit around here just to wait my turn. I'm also here for your protection as well, so it saves me manpower if I'm here and other people are not. So, do you have any questions today?
Got any questions for Marshall? Oh, Kevin?
Marshall, on the FTEs, you have listed here 6 new FTEs. Are all 6 of those supposed to be new marshals, or?
So those FTEs are to fill other positions at the Marshal Service, like our budget analysts and the stuff. So we get so many marshals, and you have to have a civilian to support that. And other ones are related to evidence and IT, those type of things.
Gotcha.
To support marshals. Those 6 new ones would not be marshal positions.
Gotcha. And the 39.4 that are vacant?
Yes.
Are those positions that are going to be used to hire some new marshals or more marshals, or what?
Yes,
Could you
that's
further
what it
explain
is.
that?
So at Post Mcgirt, we got a huge funding increase and also huge manpower increase. So I would tell you that HR has been working hand in hand with us. Building marshals is hard. We actually have 3 that started in the past week and a half, that they start their pre-training today. So HR sends us the applications, we start the process. But I can tell you that HR over the past 6 months, we knew this was going to be a big task, and we knew we couldn't get it this fiscal year. So these are all continuing fillings, but we're actively every week pulling potential marshals in to hire. So,
All right.
yeah.
Thank you, Marshall.
All right, any other questions? All right, doesn't look like we have any. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right, I saw Anna walk in. We'll go ahead and squeeze her in real quick.
Sorry, you guys are moving really fast. I hopped in my car and came as fast as I could. So, you have a copy of my budget, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about it.
All right, do we have any questions for Anna? All right, doesn't
Well,
doesn't look like we have any.
I could
All
have
right.
just stayed in my
All
office.
right.
Take it all the way over
here. Thank you, Anna. All right, not seeing anyone else. We can go. We can break to lunch and yeah, and set up back at what we got, 1 o'clock. Oh, Jennifer. All right, let's go ahead and squeeze in Human Services real quick.
Corey's on top of it, buddy.
Hey. Good afternoon. I'll catch my breath here a second. I was like, grab my book and took off. You have our budget, so be prepared if you have any questions. I don't have anything specific to discuss, just, it's all there.
It's all there. All right, Cody.
It's not really a question concerning your budgets or anything. I just wanted to take the time to say thank you. I appreciate all y'all do. Like I said, I told you before, I know I'm your number one customer over there in Adair County all the time. But I did, I know y'all get flooded with emails and stuff all the time. I guess it's just a general question. Is there a way to maybe like after I send in a request for something or send help, is there a way to, I guess, update me on my end? Like, hey, we contacted this person sometimes. Because sometimes I do know some certain requests take longer than others. And I don't hear nothing from my constituents, whether they got it or not. They're like, oh, yeah, they came out last week. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that.
I mean, I think there's always ways to streamline. I do think when we get a fewer, you know, we keep up a little bit better than what we normally would. That is something on my list to determine how we make that.
To update.
Yeah, how we streamline that a little better. Because there are days that we do get.
Because
I
hate to keep sending y'all emails like, hey, following up, because I know y'all are working on it.
Right.
It's just like.
Well, all I can say is just continue to do that, and we will definitely get back to you as soon as we have an update. And you know, we do try to get those cleared up as quick as possible. So I mean, that's anytime you send us anything, if it's just as simple as saying, hey, you know, can you make it into the office? Then that's our first step. If they have not already been into the office, if it's more involved than that, then we'll try to take it, and then we'll let you know what we can share.
Okay, but other than that, I just appreciate y'all, and thank you.
All right, any more questions? All right, Candace?
Yeah, I would echo Counselor, the distinguished counselor from Stillwell's request for what might be termed a ticketing system. You know, I've brought this up a couple of times in the past that, you know, I'm always a little concerned about, you know, a voicemail or an email kind of getting lost in the fray. And a ticketing system where we could actually see what has occurred would be really, really helpful for us. You know, I understand that oftentimes as a counselor, you know, we don't necessarily get to be privy to the follow-up because oftentimes people are calling us when they have problems. They're not calling us when the problem has been resolved. So the and this may be, you know, something for IT, you know, that ticketing system request. But as you are endeavoring to get more services into the God Doogie portal with electronic applications, I think it does bear mentioning during your budget report as well. As I was looking through the budget, I saw that we have a couple of programs in human services that have had pretty significant budget increases, and I think that's great. I just wanted to highlight one in particular, which is One Fire. I noticed they have had a 97% increase from FY23 to FY24. I think it's fantastic that our nation is investing in domestic violence services and trying to create those wraparound services for individuals who are survivors of domestic violence, because oftentimes, you know, we're not just talking about the specific issue of violence or of an experience that has happened. We're also talking about mental health. We're talking about, in some cases, substance abuse. We're talking about the need for career services and career training, childcare, housing, and so there are so many things that are attendant within the experience of domestic violence. I'm really glad to see that the significant increase in that budget and the investment that our nation is making to assist survivors of domestic violence.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And, you know, without admin support on going after maybe some of these grants, or just having the overall general support to pursue funding and to put funding back into One Fire is needed. And then One Fire being under the umbrella of Human Services, there's a team there to be able to access and call and other wraparound services that are accessible to our One Fire clients. So.
Right. And I know that you also, child welfare is also under Human Services as well. And, you know, we have a lot, as a government, we have a lot of programs that do not, we do them for the good of our people. And child welfare is one of those. I understand that a market analysis has taken place. And so are we going to see some adjustments there within the child welfare program, within some of those salaries, to kind of bring them up to a more equitable rate, say, when in comparison with state positions or other tribal positions?
I think echoing what was said earlier about the markets and different things is any of that will reflect, and I think there was numerous sources looked at, and so that I think positive results. Yeah, very positive
Okay,
results.
that we're going to see positive movement there. So are we also still seeing kind of a significant vacancy rate within child welfare as well?
It does fluctuate. I think that there may be some opportunity to capture more of those, then also doing some readjustments of duties, or maybe realigning some things within child welfare to fill some of those vacancies. I know within all of our programs, we definitely also have to look at our contingency plans and growing from within. That's a big thing that we definitely need to do and be thinking about. I even need to be doing that for myself, as working on my inner contingency plan, so.
So as we are, I mentioned the One Fire services and the services to survivors of domestic violence, but oftentimes child welfare is a component of that, because unfortunately, if domestic violence, oftentimes, we see instances of child abuse that are happening kind of alongside those instances of domestic violence as well. And so I hope there is a lot of coordination that's happening between child welfare and One Fire.
Yeah.
And I just think that, as we're moving forward and increasing our services to the individuals in our individual citizens and families who need the greatest amount of help, that we're able to continue to expand and offer more services to those folks.
Yeah, that human services team is strong, and like I said, we're all getting closer, and also knowing that we can lean on each other within programs, and that's part of it. ICW and One Fire working close together. That the heads of those areas know each other and know to reach out to each other, and I've been involved in many things where they work closely together.
Great,
So,
great.
Yeah.
The other question I have is related to family assistance. And, well, maybe not family assistance, but it's kind of in that same area, in that same vein. So as I understand that we do offer some burnout assistance for individuals who have lost their homes to fire. Do we have plans as we move forward? I know that we have done disaster assistance to, I believe it was California, Florida, and I think that there may be some conversation about doing some disaster assistance for any Cherokee residents who are in Hawaii or in Maui. Do we have any plans for kind of an expansion of kind of disaster assistance, or do we just kind of look at that on a case-by-case, as-needed basis?
I think for us, it's right now, it is on a case-by-case, determine on what programs we already have in place, and possibly placing those in the portal for maybe to be more accessible when things like that happen. But I am not at this time privy to maybe some of those conversations that are going on, but if they are occurring, I'm sure I'll definitely be a part of them soon. But as for our programs within Human Services, we are looking to make those more accessible. But overall, I can't really speak to that.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I also appreciate the continued offering of the clothing assistant grants. I receive a lot of feedback from constituents, both about the inclusion of the income guidelines this year and about that change. So I think that we may be seeing a little bit of, people are going to continue to ask for that program, and they're going to continue to want to see that program. Is that currently, well, we are going into FY '24. Is that a line item in FY '24?
Let me look back here. Yes, it is. Prior to COVID 2019, we did have, we have had the children's clothing program, and it was income-based, and it was a gen fund line item. So that is in here, and typically, the program is based off of income need, and that's what we plan on, doing in the future. Should anything else change, then, we'll keep you updated, but no, that's how that operated prior to COVID.
Well, I just think it's a great program, and I am glad to see it for FY '24. I know that there are a number of Cherokee citizens and families who are going to benefit from that program, and for whom it really fills a gap. It fills a much-needed gap for a number of our kids. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the work being done by Human Services and the
Thank
staff
you.
there.
Thank you, we appreciate that.
Thank you for the time, Chair.
All right, any more questions? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, I saw Derek step in. Let's squeeze him in real quick, then we'll break for lunch. Derek Vane? No. He's waiting for lunch. Yeah.
Good morning, council.
Morning, how are you?
You have my budget in front of you, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions for Derek? Doesn't look like it. We're good.
All
Thanks,
right.
sir.
Well, easy, all right. Got up easy today.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. All right, it's 11:36. Let's go ahead and break for lunch. Is everyone good with just an hour lunch? All right, we'll start back at 12:40. All right, thank you.